Guys, I have been wanting to share this recipe on here for a while now. I was just kind of waiting until the temperature got cold enough for me to feel like it was really that season. And so now that we're pretty much well into the fall, I thought this was the perfect time to share the recipe for this loaded vegan baked potato soup. So about a year ago, I was on Instagram. I saw someone that I follow talking about loaded baked potato soup. I don't know that I've ever had loaded baked potato soup before, but I was like, that sounds absolutely incredible, and I want to make a vegan version of it. So around this time last year, I tried it out, I tested it out, and it came out so well. It has the creaminess from the potatoes and the beans, and then it has this zestiness from the sour cream and the shiitake bacon, and then it's got a little bit of a fatty component with the vegan cheese and the sour cream, and then you've also got broccoli and chives, and then the smoked paprika just adds this nice little something different. It all just comes together beautifully. What I love about this recipe is I think most people would consider a loaded baked potato soup as kind of like a really unhealthy food, a junky meal. But what's so great about this, and honestly, it's true of so many sort of regular recipes that we veganize, is that the vegan version is really not that unhealthy. And in fact, it's actually pretty healthy. I hate this concept of like, oh, this is a bad food and this is a good food and I have to feel guilty about eating this. Something like this, where it is so hearty and tasty and satisfying, but I also know that there's a lot of really good ingredients in here. It just makes me happy, so hopefully you guys will feel the same way about it. So I'm starting off by peeling my potatoes. I am using 3 potatoes. These are Russets, I believe. After I peel them, I am cutting them up. I'm trying to make all of the pieces about the same size, but the nice part is you really don't have to worry too much about the shape or anything like that because they're gonna get pureed. Spoiler alert. And I'm just sprinkling a few twists of salt on here, and I'm getting these in the oven at 375. Basically, I want to get these in the oven as soon as possible because they do take a long time, and so it ends up kind of timing out perfectly with all of the other prep that I have to do. And the potatoes we're basically just going to cook until they're slightly golden brown. Next up, I've got my shiitakes because we are making shiitake bacon, one of my favorite things ever. So I am pulling the stems off my shiitakes, giving them a rinse, patting them dry, and then cutting them up into little strips. I do have an entire video on making shiitake bacon, so if you want a little more in-depth look, you can click on that. Next up, I've got my broccoli that I have washed, and I'm just gonna cut off the, sort of trunk of the broccoli, and then I'm just cutting up the pieces. It can be in, honestly, pretty big pieces because we are going to end up chopping them smaller later. And I'm throwing them into the steamer basket of my always pan, and then I'm just gonna throw them in my always pan with some water and just steam them until they're about fork tender. And I'm just gonna go ahead and peel some garlic. This is 3 cloves. I am peeling it up, I'm not crushing it, because what we're going to do is actually put these on the pan with the potatoes. When the potatoes are about 75% of the way done, I just add the garlic cloves in right on that pan with the potatoes, and so they can get nice and roasted as well. So I'm actually going to get my shiitakes all ready to go in the oven. I'm using the 2 pans of my air fryer because I just really like them. I like that they're perforated, and then I can just, throw these in the oven with the potatoes. So I'm just drizzling these with some olive oil, giving a little sprinkle of salt, and then just kind of mushing them together with my hands and then laying them out as evenly as possible so that there's, little to no overlap. So I just honestly put these in the oven on the rack beneath the potatoes, and I'm just gonna kind of leave these in there until they get nice and crispy and browned. I'm also gonna take this moment to prep my cannellini beans, so really just draining them, rinsing them. Adding the cannellini beans into the base of the soup is going to help bring out a nice creaminess, and then it also adds a little extra protein and fiber, so I think it's just a really seamless way to integrate those extra elements into our soup base. So I'm also going to get a pot of water ready. I'm gonna put it on the stove and get it starting to boil because it can take a little while, so I want it to be nice and hot when I'm ready for it. I'm not doing that much water because I like this soup to be really thick, and I can always add more water in, but it's harder to reduce the liquid levels. Next, I'm gonna make my sour cream. Pretty sure I've made this in other videos. This is kind of like my semi-homemade with Sandra Lee moment. This is literally just veganese and lemon juice, but I swear to God, it makes such a delicious sour cream. You can use any vegan mayo, and honestly, there's lots of recipes out there that use tofu or cashews as the base that are more kind of like homemade sour creams, but this isn't one of them. Obviously using some veganese, a little squeeze of lemon. I'm not doing too much because I want to keep the sour cream pretty thick this time. So once I think it is tasting nice and zesty, I'll just set that aside for now. I'm also going to prep my chives. I honestly don't think I've ever made this soup with chives. I think I've always used scallions. Just have been having a harder time finding chives for some reason. But I'm just chopping these up really nice and fine, getting them into a little dish and putting those aside for when I'm ready to plate everything. So my broccoli has steamed, and I'm just gonna transfer it to my cutting board and chop it up nice and small. If you guys watch my videos, you probably know at this point, sort of textures of veggies and soups and salads and like sandwiches and pizzas, honestly, is very important to me. I don't think anyone wants like an enormous chunk of broccoli in their soup, so I like cutting them up pretty small, and then I'll just put them back in the steamer for now. And I'm going to go ahead and add my veggie stock base to my water. I use Better Than Bouillon. I absolutely love it. If you wanted to use a just like a pre-made veggie broth from the store, then obviously you wouldn't put water in your pot, you would put the veggie stock. But I'm just gonna put about this much. I don't measure it, so I don't know, maybe that's like half a tablespoon. Again, you can always add more, but that's what I start with. And that actually ended up being the perfect amount. So now I've got my steaming hot broth, and I'm gonna add in my cannellini beans, and my potatoes along with my garlic cloves are now done. So I'm gonna go ahead and put those in the pot with the cannellini beans and the broth. And then I'm going to take that mixture and put it back on the stove to kind of simmer up or boil really for like 5 to 10 more minutes, because I really want the flavor of the broth to kind of infuse into the potatoes and the beans. So after that, I'm going to get out my immersion blender, which if you don't have an immersion blender, they're so convenient. You could also just obviously pour this mixture into your blender, but I really enjoy the immersion blender. Immersion blenders work best when there's honestly more liquid than I have here. So I'm just kind of being careful and going slowly and blending this little by little. I did decide at this point that I needed a little more water because the mixture was pretty thick. So I'm adding in some more water and continuing to blend. I like to blend it until it's pretty smooth. I have seen that some people with loaded baked potato soup like to have kind of like chunks of potato, which I think would also be good. So if I were to do that, I'd probably set aside about 1/3 of the pan of potatoes and then maybe cut those up a little bit more, blend everything else like this, and then add those potatoes in afterward. So I'm kind of just giving it a test with a wooden spoon to check the consistency. And I'm adding a little more water, and I think it's perfect. And it tastes really good, so I didn't adjust the seasonings at all. By the way, here's how my shiitake bacon came out. This wasn't my best batch of shiitake bacon I've ever made. I've found that it really just comes down to the quality of the mushrooms. I find that the Whole Foods organic shiitakes are the best. They yield the best shiitake bacon that I've ever made. These were from a local health food store, and I think the shiitakes were a little bit more like dried out, but they still look and taste good. And then as a topping on my soup, I'm going to use the Daiya cheddar shreds. You can use any cheddar you like or a different cheese if you want, but I feel like cheddar is kind of the classic baked potato cheese. And I've also got my broccoli. I'm basically just lining everything up to prep for plating, or I guess bowling my soup. Got my sour cream out of the fridge, and of course my chives. And the superstar ingredient, I think, is smoked paprika. I just started using smoked paprika like a year ago, but it just tastes so good. It just adds that perfect little finishing touch, and I do kind of associate this flavor with baked potatoes. And now I'm ready to build my soup bowl. So I'm getting my nice potatoey base there, and then I'm adding some of my cheddar shreds. I like to add those first so that they have time to get really warm and melty. And then I'm doing my broccoli, sour cream, my shiitake bacon. I actually ended up breaking a bunch of the pieces in half because I like them a little smaller. I like them to be more, you know, like bacon bits, chives, and my smoked paprika. And there it is. There you have it. I mean, I don't know. I think that looks insanely delicious. It's just such a cool concept for a soup. Obviously, I didn't come up with it, but I really like the way that I have veganized it, and I definitely recommend it. Of course, you can make the base a little bit thinner if you want, but I have found that a thicker base just is what I prefer. And then for maybe the most fun part, for me at least, other than eating it, I'm gonna just mix everything up because honestly, I want it all nice and mixed together. As for what I thought of the soup, I'm gonna let my words speak for themselves. Oh my god, it's so good. I'm so happy with how this came out. I am so happy that it's soup season again. This recipe to me is just another example of how we don't have to give up our favorite foods just because we are vegan. There's always a creative way to veganize a dish that you used to love, and honestly, it's such a fun process, at least for me, and it's this challenge, and it's so rewarding when it comes out well. Hopefully I've inspired some of you to try making this, or try veganizing another one of your favorite non-vegan dishes. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up if it made your mouth water, and I'll see you next time. Bye.